Hi everybody, I'm going to show you today how you can use Photoshop to turn a photo of an animal like this one into just having what we call word art so that it looks like the shapes and where we're going to take those pieces of text and we are going to warp them. So in order to get started, you need to open up your own copy of an animal, whichever it is, and duplicate your background on that. So I've already done mine here. You can see I've got my background. I right clicked on that and I said duplicate layer, and that gave me my background copy. So you're all familiar with doing that. So first thing, we need to get that dog on its own layer. You can use any animal that you've chosen, but it makes sense if your animal actually has some shape to it that we'll be able to identify once we put the word art in there as to what it's going to look like. I'm going to go to that new object selection tool that Photoshop put in the last couple of years. And when I choose that tool, I guess I actually have to click it to choose it, then remember, you've got this button up at the top that is for either your device for quicker results or cloud for detailed. It'll work a whole lot faster if you leave it on device, and you can click the button to say select subject. And look at that. It's done a pretty darn good job. Now, it's missed a little bit. You can see in this area, I can just refine that. We don't have to worry about individual hairs or the fur that is there as long as we have a pretty rough selection to it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my lasso tool, hold down Alt because I want to just subtract out those pixels that are around there, get a little bit cleaner of a selection. This part of the tail here at the back end is probably fine for it. If I wanted to, I could just refine that later on when I'm actually going to make it. So I'm going to jump that to its own layer. Control J is your shortcut. And now that is like doing a copy and a paste all at once. So there is my dog on my own layer. This might be a good time for you to save your file. So you can go to File and save that. Make sure that you are putting it into the correct folder on your computer. So we're going to start building up an outline here. I'm just going to make some guides right now by adding a stroke to this layer. So this effects button that's down here at the bottom, if you go into that effects, you will see that there is a effect that we call stroke. And when we do stroke, it has already grabbed a 1 pixel stroke by default. Mine is set to green for whatever reason. It's probably the last color of stroke that I actually used. It doesn't really matter what color it is. This is only going to be a guide. So if yours is black, red, whatever, just not white because that will blend in too much with the background once we shut off the background copy of the dog and the grass itself. I'm going to just make mine a little bit thicker. I'm going to go up to a couple of pixels here and say OK. At that point, create a new layer, a blank layer. So hit your new layer button. And now we're going to grab a brush, grab a hard brush so that it is all the way hard. And you're going to need a fairly small brush for that. Remember that your shortcut for your brush is your square bracket keys. So you can actually see it live. I can make it bigger. I can make it smaller. And I just want to have a nice small brush that kind of matches the size of that stroke by a few pixels. And when you have a brush on there, if you're not seeing that size change, it's possibly because you have your caps lock on. So notice here, if I say caps lock, oh, it disappears. It just goes to a crosshair. And now you can hear me. I'm making that smaller and bigger, and it's not showing me anything. But if I take my caps lock off, then those brackets work bigger and smaller. And so what you're going to do here is you're going to start just drawing some guides for yourself so that you know where you're going to need to place your words. So I'm going to know that I've got to define that ear a little bit. And I probably want to define, I would say maybe this section here with my eye that's in there. And that eye is kind of missing on that side, so it's probably okay. But I probably want to define my nose. And I would want to define my mouth and maybe even define my tongue. So you're just going and making some rough strokes around here to be able to define this and put it into different sections. I know that I would want to have a definition here at the back where it goes down his leg and creates the tail instead. I would need a definition that comes along through here. And I would need a definition that comes along through this area and to divide out those two legs that you see in there. And then we can still divide a little bit through color. Maybe I wanted to have a division here where the collar would be sitting on that dog. And if you wanted to have a division this leg is actually kind of coming up through there a little bit further. So all of that has been on its own layer, and that means now we can shut off our background and shut off our dog, and you can see that I've got those strokes going around the outside edge of it. So this is my guide here. And the reason I put those on its own layer was so that as I create it, I can delete them and shut them off later on as I go. Again, another really good time to save your file. Go up into your save button, or because you've already saved it, your shortcut, Control S, will save that right over top of the one you've already started. So now to start building up our words, I want to think of some words that would describe this lovely golden retriever that we've got. And this is also where you want to start thinking about what kind of a color scheme you want to use. Please choose colors that are either analogous or maybe they're complementary. Maybe you're going to use a split comp. Use your color theory and choose a color palette that you want to use that is going to work well. I'm going to go to my foreground color and I'm going to choose all kinds of shades of blues getting into turquoises to make this an analogous color theme. So I'm going to start with my first blue. Now we want to also choose a font that is going to be a really nice font. So take some time, go through the ones that you like. You want it to be readable and to be able to be something that's, I guess, probably not too scripty. If it's too scripty, if it's too much like calligraphy or handwriting, it becomes harder to read. So go take some time and figure out what font you'd like to use. All right, so I picked my font and I'm going to just click, don't draw a box, just click. And use all capital letters, so put your caps lock on. And I'm going to start with the word loyal. And then what I can do is I can take that and make my text bigger. And try to get that text to start to fit into where you want it to go. And with that text, remember that we do have those text tools that we used before in your assignment here that we can change, for instance, the width of your letters with adding a little bit of space between them. I wouldn't suggest that you add a whole lot of space if you are going to do that one. Whoops, I didn't mean to change that to 100. I wanted to change my actual width back to 100. Change your width of your letters if you're going to actually make them thicker so that they move out. And you can place that sort of where you want it to go. And then from there, hit your Control T to transform it. You can rotate it, kind of get it into position where you want that to go, and move it so that it's starting to build up. And then I'm going to do some warping on it. Okay, so I've got my word sort of placed along the right angle for it. Now I'm going to take and rasterize this text. And so over here at your layer, what you want to do is you want to right click somewhere in this gray area, and you're going to say rasterize the type. And what that does is it converts the type to a shape. You can notice that there's no longer a T in that little icon. And once it's a shape, do a Control T on that layer to transform it. And then inside of that, take your mouse, right click, and say warp. When you do that, you get these little grid lines. And now what I can do is I can grab different points of it and I can start stretching that to be able to bring it into where I want those letters to go. Now these handles will also allow you to take that and really stretch them into different positions so that I want to follow those marks that I used as my guides. So I can pull up these different pieces of it. I can pull it out. I would take my L and drag it right out to it. And when you've got your first word in place, go ahead and check it. And now you're just going to build up your words all the way through your dog. I'll create my second piece of text for you here. I'm going to change my color slightly and get down into these lighter blues. And I'm going to use the word playful now. And I'll stick playful along here. So playful. And I'm going to take that and change its size a little bit. And remember, you have that character palette. So it's probably remembering what you did last time. I'm going to reset mine back to 100% for my text width. And then I can kind of start to get it into position where I want it to be. That looks like probably a good size. Once I rotate that in, I might need to edit it a little bit more. Check mark it, do a Control T to transform it, get it into its right angle as to how you want it to go. I might make this just a little bit bigger. So notice how I can just grab it a little bit and pull it down a little bit more and maybe move it outside just so it's not touching my word loyal. That'll be a good one to be able to warp in there. So then remember again, you are going to right click over on the layer and say rasterize. And once it's rasterized, Control T to transform. Right click inside of there and say warp. And now you can grab those points again and you can start warping it to fit inside that next little section where it goes. Okay, so I've got all my words in their place where I want them to be. I'm going to shut off my dog layer so that you can see just the words that are in there. And I'm also going to shut off my stroke layer. And now you can see how my shape of my dog has taken place. The last thing that you want to do is to create a nice background color for it. So sit on that stroke layer because we want a layer to be created right above it and create a new layer. I'm going to call this one my new background color. And this is where you can now choose whichever color you want to. Now you can either create that through a color fill layer if you remember how to do that, or you can choose your color through here and then we'll just paint bucket it in. I'm just going to go with black. I just want to see what this looks like on black. So I'm going to grab my paint bucket and on that new color, I'm going to just fill it in. And there you have my nice dog.